Michael with United Veterans Worldwide for an interview today with Cassandra. And she and I had an opportunity to speak yesterday, and it was really productive. She's got a great personality. She's in a great field where she's an advocate for veterans' causes. She's made a lot of difference in people's lives already, and I know that she will continue to do so with this interview going to this global channel and to all of you today. So thanks for tuning in. I want to introduce you to Cassandra. So Cassandra, would you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, my name is Cassandra Elliott. I'm a veteran of the Canadian Armed Forces. I served primarily as a vehicle technician for a little over 10 years up here in mostly Alberta. I was medically released in 2019. I had a little lab accident, tried to fight one, did not win. And so now I'm a registered provisional psychologist and work primarily with veterans and first responders up here in Edmonton, Canada.
And I told her yesterday that I was so glad that she's in Alberta because I spent 2 years there as a missionary for our church, and I absolutely loved my experience from the sugar beets in Tabor all the way to Fort Saskatchewan in the north, and I love the people, I love the environment. The cold, however, not so much a fan, but we got used to it just like everybody does. So anyway, welcome Cassandra, thanks for joining us today. And as you know, I've conducted several interviews with veterans across every scope, male and female so far, and we've talked about a lot of the trauma that occurs from normal combat operations that exist, and the wellness journey that I've taken from my combat experience into now civilian life. And your story is a little bit different. So would you mind walking us through a little bit about your journey in the military that's maybe unique from a female perspective? I didn't necessarily go out to the field with females as much as the Canadian Army seems like it does. So.
Yeah. After the interview, I'll have to tell you a story when we trained with some of the Americans.
Okay.
It was quite a shock for them to see women doing some of the things that we were doing in the military.
I believe it.
Yeah, our military is a little more integrated, it seems, when it comes to men and women. I believe we started it quite a bit before the Americans, especially in regards to the combat roles. We didn't have the kind of division between support trades versus combat roles that the Americans had, I believe.
Yeah.
And so that's come with its challenges. And they're challenges that every military, unfortunately, is coming to grips with right now.
True.
Yeah. Oh gosh, this is such a big topic. Okay, so when I first joined the military, I was actually a reserve medic, and I had a traumatic experience myself involving one of my chain of command, which resulted in essentially not the first time, but of losing a combat position, going on a combat tour to Afghanistan. So as a result of that, I dropped out of school, and I actually ended up deciding then to join the Right Force because I saw these big, strong dudes and was like, well, they can take care of themselves. Look how strong they are. So that was kind of my mentality of if I can get that strong, no one's going to fuck with me again. So
yeah.
Can I swear?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, and then as my military journey continued, I would often run into more issues and stuff that came up and occurred, and we can talk a little bit about what some of those things I saw were.
Yeah.
But eventually there kind of came a point. So in 2016, I believe it was around there, Canada announced something called Operation Honor, which from the get-go was a big problem because the first thing problem with was we have a lot of French people in our military. We have an entirely French division, and so the jokes of the French people were Operation Hop on Her, and the operation was announced to kind of combat sexual assaults in the Canadian Armed Forces.
Gotcha.
And since then, I've been my role kind of pivoted. I was still working as a vehicle tech at the time, but I kind of took on this extra role because of my experience and position and stuff of like helping other survivors navigate the military system, the legal system, and all that other stuff related to sexual misconduct. So I will let you like ask what you want of all of that.
Yeah, so when we talk about a mistreatment by a senior person, somebody took advantage of you and your situation in a way that should never happen in an environment of work, in an environment where you have a brother and sisterhood in the military. And without going into detail, this person didn't receive the punishment that they should have received.
No, so in my circumstance, someone had actually heard the commotion and was able to intervene about like halfway through. And by intervene, it was more of just getting me out of there. After like that had happened, no one had said anything for several weeks after. So like, and so I continued to experience different types of harassment from this person. So like being on the range and just getting just beasted and singled out and put down and stuff a lot in front of my colleagues. And it kind of got to the point where it was bad enough that my platoon officer and the CEO eventually were like, what the fuck is going on here? Because they were like, this, master corporal what is he doing? And so the guy who had intervened during the incident had kind of spoken out then and like talked to them and told them what had happened. And from there, they had like sat me down and was like, well, there's nothing, like, we can't really do much. He's got PTSD from Afghanistan, and like, he's got lots of problems at home, and like we need to get him help and all this other stuff. So what can we do for you? And like, it was around that time where I was like, well, I want to go Red Force, so speed up my application so I can get the fuck out of this unit, and I don't want to come back to this unit ever again. And so they agreed to that. So I kind of just like waited out for like 3 months for that switch from reserve to Red Force to happen. And then I just kind of went on my own way.
So I'm confused by that, because if I had been in that unit with you, I promise you I would have beat it so bad. I wouldn't have asked questions. I would have just done it. It would have been what we would consider field punishment. Before it got up to the levels where somebody would officially punish, I would have handled my own form of punishment, and that's what that person deserves, regardless of whatever PTSD they're going with. Listen, there is zero tolerance for behavior like that. If you struggle, but you do not take it out on somebody else.
Yeah, there was that, and then there were other, like, when I did get settled in as a vehicle tech, like, there were times where, like, I was like, I want to go to Afghanistan, like, I want, like, my chance to, like, be a part of this and do something, right? Because, I was still young and didn't fully comprehend, like, the ramifications of war. All I saw was that I was losing friends, and I was like, I can't just keep standing by doing nothing. I felt helpless. But it kept kind of being the excuse to me of being some sergeant or whatever at the time was like, well, no, because like, I know these other women, whatever, this trade, that trade, like, and they were brutally like raped and blah, blah, blah. So like, we can't let you go overseas. Like, you're too much of a target. So, there's stuff like that. And then like, I saw there's field justice that happens. That happens sometimes. Unfortunately, it's not all the time. And sometimes you have to take actions yourself. So Cassandra did get big and strong and was able to defend herself.
Yeah.
But there are other like situations too where someone does do something, and it doesn't not necessarily like sexual assault. Like this could be anything, pedophiles, stuff like that. Like any kind of like negative behavior. Unfortunately, because of the tight bonds and stuff that we see in people like that they develop through war and combat and stuff, abandoning someone is not easy for people to do unless like there's a mountain of evidence and they basically see the behavior for themselves. So a lot of the times these situations are he said, she said, and who are you going to believe? You're going to believe your buddy you went to war with and whatever, this and that. So that's why we kind of see a lot of people getting protected.
Well, so that I can make a blank statement here, MST or military sexual trauma is no light matter, and I urge anyone who's in a position of authority in your military, in your countries, always stand up for this and investigate, and find the root and punish the people responsible, because it becomes chronic, and it's not just a one-time deal for most people who do these type of acts. They justify it in their own mind. Anyway, Cassandra, I'm sorry that you had to go through that, but what I would like to say to you as well is that your service, which spanned about 10 years in the Canadian military, qualifies you in my mind in every aspect as a warrior, as a person who has overcome. You faced enough demons that you didn't have to face a foreign enemy. You had to face a local one. And so I salute you for your efforts. Tell me a little bit about this accident that you had with this vehicle. And give me the acronym that you said again for that vehicle.
Oh, LAV. Our light armored vehicles, you guys call them LAVs.
Yes.
We just call them LAVs.
Okay,
but,
okay.
You guys have, Strikers, I think?
We have Strikers, Bradleys. Yeah.
Yeah, so...
I was a Bradley commander.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did lab section and, ran lab section for a bit with the combat engineers up here.
Yeah.
Got my little lab picture on the
Yeah,
wall.
I saw it. That's cool. That's really cool.
They were my babies.
Yep. So you had an accident while you were in the lab. So tell me about that.
I had a whole bunch of accidents. This stuff happens, right? We had to, you do road moves, you do road tests, stuff like that. And, not everyone on the road is driving legally. And sometimes someone is doing an illegal, pass as you, go to do a turn and, things happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been in a few accidents. The one with the semi was funny. We're not going to get into that for legal reasons. But no, the one that actually... It was the stupidest thing. There's this, someone made a mistake, and what ended up happening, I don't want to talk about it too much.
Yeah.
Because, again, right,
that's fine.
No one needs to get in trouble here. What ended up happening was I was working on top of a lab. Someone did something. It had moved the lab, and at this particular one, because, normally on top of the CAT engines, they have the black grippy tape stuff on the very top of the engine, so when you step on it you don't slip and fall.
Yeah.
This one was worn out, and there had just been an oil change done on it, and the oil change had not been cleaned up yet, so when I went to brace I had slipped and fell and destroyed my spine.
You fell off of that lav?
Yeah.
So that's like a 10-foot, 8-foot, 9-foot drop, something around there, right?
Maybe 6, because I was right at the nose.
Okay.
It wasn't at the top of the
Okay.
or anything.
But still, significant fall.
It was more the way I had landed right on the corner of the nose. And then just flopped over from there.
Oh, God.
Well, it's annoying because I've been in way more serious accidents than that, but that was the one that just my back was nope.
Yeah. And so a lot of veterans on this channel can relate to chronic pain. I, for myself, damaged my shoulder 3 different events. One was an airborne jump in Ranger training. The second was an explosion in Iraq that threw me into a wall, knocked me unconscious, but I think I landed in this shoulder on the wall too. And then another one was falling off of an obstacle course during some special operations training and dropped and landed on my head and my shoulder again. So I've got a TBI from some of that, but my shoulder is what really affected my sleep for years until they finally just lobbed it off, and this is all metal and plastic now. But chronic pain, talk to me about chronic pain with your back.
Oh, chronic pain is such a complicated beast. With my back, what ended up happening was they sent me for a bone scan after, and to which time we realized like how many bones I had actually broken over the years. And they actually found this like really rare bone disease in my feet. And so everyone got kind of sidetracked by that. I broke my feet in basic, and I like decided one day to be like, I should probably get this checked out. And they were like, oh, you just have gout. And so they're like, don't eat so much red meat. I was like, okay. So I just continued on through like basic and SQ and all that other jazz. And
if people don't know, Alberta is famous for its beef. So when they say don't eat as much beef, Alberta beef is famous worldwide. So
it's tasty.
It is.
So then they're like, oh, you didn't like when you broke your feet. They when the healing process started, essentially it never stopped. So I have like this continuous bone growth, but because I'm so active, there's like the bones are wearing, but the joints are destroyed. There's no nerves or anything left, so I don't really feel any pain anymore. But anyways, they were super distracted by that, and they were like, well, your back looks fine, so we're like, your back's fine. What ended up happening was the blood flow to my discs was cut off, and so like my discs, essentially for the outside of your disc, there's like a hard part on the outside and then a gooey part on the inside. And so the hard part essentially just like dried and shriveled up. And so there's these like giant cracks. Well, the gooey stuff would come out and then put pressure on the nerves. So there was a lot of telling me the pain was in my head for a long time, and they didn't give me an MRI till about a year and a half later.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it was bad. Like I wasn't, my unit was really understanding. My chain of command was really good at the time. They knew something was wrong because like thank God I had the muscle memory to do stuff on the labs the way I did, because I could kind of just use my upper body to like move myself around most of the stuff. But like I'd have to lay down on the ground randomly for 20 minutes here or there. The guys would like help tie my boots up in the morning and stuff like that. And then there was just one day my warrant was like, enough's enough. And he brought me into the MRI. I was like, she's getting an MRI. She's getting it now. So they sent me for an MRI right away. and I went in the next day, and they're like, I was like, so the pain's in my head, eh? And they're like, no, you should probably sit down. I was like, okay. And at that time, like I knew how bad my back was. Like I knew it wasn't in my head. So I had seen the writing on the wall. So I kind of started doing my own stuff outside the military and looking at like, what are my next steps going to be? So they gave me that diagnosis. I started doing my own thing. The medical release process started. You and I talked a bit about this yesterday. Our medical release systems are very different, it sounds like.
Yeah, I was quite frustrated hearing about the challenges that Canadian service members who are being released with combat-related injuries or even just injuries of service-related. And they say service-related injuries, yeah, and are having difficulty getting the care that they need. It baffles my mind.
Yeah, we have a big problem with continuity of care up here in general. It doesn't matter if you're military or civilian here. Finding a doctor is really, really bad right now. Like we just had a few people here in the province pass away waiting for cancer treatment because they couldn't get in. So yeah, our medical system right now is facing some serious challenges. And then for military, you have the military doctors and people you see and stuff. And then you're supposed to like get all the civilians once you're out. Now they are a little bit better about it now. They want you to have that stuff lined up before you're released. They've caught onto that. But like there's still lots of geographical challenges because it's such a big country and not as populated as you guys are.
Right.
So our medical release process usually takes like anywhere from basically, if you're getting out normally, you can be gone within 30 days if you want. If you're taking the medical release, then it's usually about at least a year and a half wait. So there's a lot of uncertainty and there's a lot of challenges with our medical release system because of the length of time that happens.
Cassandra, after you told me that, I did some brainstorming last night, and I decided that I was probably going to start to champion for better services in Canada for our veterans specifically. If the civilian population is struggling with it as well, that's one thing. But my concern, my care is for the military and first responders, and whatever strings, whatever meetings, whatever influence I can have to push that forward, it's now part of my cause.
Well, I mean, the more voices in the space, the better. Like, just like same as the U.S. is, we're starting to see a movement here in Canada. I'm noticing, anyways, lots of more veterans are taking advantage of, whatever education benefits they can get, or just like simply going out and championing. We're seeing a lot more advocates, a lot more work in the peer support side of things. There's a lot of up and coming stuff happening. It's really exciting, actually, to see in the veteran community. So we got totally sidetracked off of chronic pain.
No, that's fine. This is all part of it. It's like chronic pain leads us into a system, and if the system isn't functioning, then that's it's another root cause of what makes it difficult.
And it connects to the chronic pain too.
Yeah.
So one of the findings and research that they've been highlighting is that the transition process up here from going from military civilian, and not necessarily just for medically released people, because how many of our knees are going by the time we've been in for 4 or 5 years, right? This is not a new problem for any military.
Nope.
So anyone who gets out, they're noticing that because of the challenges of the transition process itself, that stress is really aggravating people's injuries and creating higher levels of chronic pain in our population. So that's a big red flag that people are aware of now. It's just doing something about it is pretty slow moving because how big these bureaucracies are.
Yeah. And the government in Canada is located in Ottawa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
they are a federal government. Their parliament is in Ottawa. Yeah.
I wonder why U.S. and Canadian federal is not located central. It's always on the East Coast.
There's well, Ontario is kind of considered our center because that's where most of the population kind of is.
I was thinking Saskatchewan, Manitoba.
The prairies.
Yeah.
Much love to Saskatchewan and Manitoba, but there's not a lot there.
Yeah.
And the weather's harsh.
Yeah. Well, they say if your dog runs away there, you just have to look out and you'll see it 3 days later still running because it's so flat, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So we go from chronic pain to where you are today, and when we talk about what you're doing in advocacy, you've taken your trauma, your injuries, and how did that get you to where you are now in the education that you're providing for people in advocacy?
The honest answer is not the answer lots of people are going to hear, but it's spite and anger. How I was treated moving through the system, the institutional betrayal of everything that I experienced, whether it was due to the sexual assault or to how I was treated during the release process, the medical transition, being told the pain was in my head, all this stuff to this day. That anger fuels me.
Yeah.
Because that continued even up until this year, right? There's the problem with understanding how stress and pain correlate is it clouds people's judgment and generalizes the situation to everyone. And so the problem with that is when you're looking at a military veteran population, there's a mentality amongst healthcare providers that, they're going through all this stress, so it's making their pain worse. So the pain's in their head, and if they deal with their stress, it's going to get rid of their pain. And the reality is that's not fair.
Yep.
Right? There's so many structural conditions. Yes, stress is a component of that, but it doesn't mean that those structural things get dismissed. And in me, they did. And what ended up happening was back in July, when I was barely able to walk again and was having another flare-up, it was like, oh, because, like I'm moving away from this rehab system to that system. And so I'm more stressed out. And so the pain is contributing to my disability, or sorry, the stress is contributing to my disability, my pain and stuff. And I was dismissed and not just like military veteran people, but also by the medical system as well. And it turned out that, thank God for my physiotherapist, seeing the warning signs, consulting with her colleagues, and then calling me and telling me to get to the University of Alberta Hospital immediately, because I had developed what's called cauda syndrome, which basically means that because the injury had degenerated so badly, there was no chance of like reversal. There was no chance of healing. It was just going to keep degenerating, and it did. So all the squishy stuff ended up crushing the rest of my spinal cord. So I became paralyzed, like almost fully waist down.
And that's where you are today?
So I had the emergency surgery.
And they drained it and...
Yeah, they removed the disc. It was actually pretty simple surgery for them. They pretty much just had to remove everything. There's a bit of the outer disc still there. I didn't need to get that replaced. And then everything else was healthy. So they're like, you should be fine with some physio. So I made a really good recovery because I'm still active, and I've been doing my physio and working out and all that stuff since.
Thank goodness.
I recovered pretty quickly, aside from, a few hiccups and things. Like now I need like pelvic floor therapy and a few things just to kind of get back on track here.
Yeah.
But someone took me seriously and didn't treat me as a statistic. And that's what I needed. And that's something that a lot of people don't get.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
Yep. So, a lot of us can relate to chronic pain, having issues going back and forth through medical. In order for me to totally get the benefits I needed, it took me several years of continuously going to certain doctors, psychiatrists, for them to identify that the PTSD that I was dealing with, whether it was, I didn't really have nightmares, but I had more daymares where I would look at like trash on the side of the road, and or roadkill, and it would flash back to those scenes, right? And it took a while for me to process through all of that, until our medical decided to say, okay, this is something that's permanent and total, which means they'll never drop that value ever again the rest of my life, knowing that I would have to continue to fight through it and work through it, which was the right answer, but it took 4 years to get to that point. In the meantime, they were still contributing somewhat in benefits and doing some other things, but the longevity of it took a long time to prove. But it happened, and thank goodness that benefit finally came, and I want that for others as well. We talked yesterday about an issue that's ongoing globally. I saw somebody on Instagram post an active diagram that showed all of the soldier suicides that have taken place, and almost like a graph that showed at the bottom current deaths related to combat and how that grew over time, and suicide rate, and it's just, it's like 30 times the number of what we lost in combat, and it's so hard, so frustrating. And I know that and I know people who have lost their lives. It's now almost flipping for me, and I'm seeing more cancer-related deaths for guys my age versus the suicide. But you did a lot to help out guys in your unit who were struggling. Tell me an example of you had to go through someone's door or window to rescue them. And
yeah, I don't want to get you in the story.
Sure.
They are still alive, thankfully.
Yeah. Well, thank goodness. Yes.
But yeah, there were a few times, and like I don't know if it was because like I was a girl, and because like it's easier. I'm told a lot that it's easier to kind of open up to a woman than it is like another man.
Yeah.
So like I received a few calls over the years. Of guys just being like at their lowest, and just I don't need to explain that like dark hole to anyone who's been there. Like, it is what it is. But yeah, thankfully like some reached out, and we were able to like get them enforce that connection. get the chain of command involved, let them know that they were cared about, let them know that like they were part of the team, that there was still a team, there was still cohesion, there's still people who had their back.
I think the biggest factor is most won't reach out. They bury it, and then they start to feel like, I'm maybe the only one. And the reality is that there are lots who struggle with this. There's lots of people who get that dark, that low. Medication can help, but really connection is the saving grace. And I'm so glad, Cassandra, that you were one of those people who connected, built trust, and were able to intervene for people's lives and their family's sake. So that's a wonderful example. So tell me about the work you're doing today. Tell me about your occupation. What do you do?
So now I'm a registered provisional psychologist. That's a mouthful. But basically, so I'm just a therapist. I work with veterans, first responders, things with addressing issues like PTSD, institutional betrayal, moral injury, meaning, transitioning, like building that like successful transition plan. I deal a lot with like uncertainty, and I also work with like chronic pain and illnesses and injuries. So I do that, doing some volunteer work. I still keep up like working in the MST community, like for advocating for military sexual trauma supports as best as I can. So just staying busy and keeping in touch with, trying to keep up with all these new veteran stuff that's like popping up. And getting we have a new mutual friend because of that.
Yes, which is wonderful. The Canadians that I've been able to come in contact with and meet that are so open, it's been a great experience for me. Let me ask this. All right, as we finish up this interview, I always ask my guests a question, and I really want your advice on how people can transition from trauma to triumph, and maybe you can provide some advice to our group.
First things first, get your safety and security squared away. Try and get a strong healthcare team that's like physio, chiro, massage, doctor, specialists. Get as many people in your corner as you can, because even if 5 people miss something, there might be that one person who catches it.
Love that.
And then find something that motivates you. Motivation is a big thing. Find what it is that you like to do. Reach out and ask for help if you need to figure out what that is. But I'd say, don't settle for just a job, just to put stuff on the table. Like, please find meaning, whether that's volunteering, serving the community. Find meaning somewhere.
Yeah, and that is excellent advice. And the last couple of people that I've interviewed have said something very similar, which I love, that there's a reiteration of the same principles, which is have a purpose-driven life going forward, whatever that means. When I talk about my wellness journey, it includes nutrition, fitness, connection, and so much of what I'm doing now, including meeting with you, which is a wonderful person, connecting and relating in that brother sisterhood that we share as a sister service. And so, Cassandra, thanks very much today for your vulnerability and sharing these examples with us. We want to take it seriously and apply these lessons to all of our military, all of our veterans across the globe. And we'll conclude with this. Thanks very much, Cassandra.
You guys have great resources down there too when it comes to things like MST and all that stuff. So please reach out. Like, you guys have the NOVA organization down there. It's amazing. But yes, anyone who's suffering with anything, just please reach out and ask about it.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.